Hello everyone, welcome to the world of Phantom Brave. And yes, I am really excited about doing this unboxing because I have a history going back with Phantom Brave. I bet quite a few of you do as well. So there is a lot to talk about today, a lot of history, yes, and that is important. So buckle in, it's gonna be quite a ride. Let me start by saying thank you to NIS America for sending over this Phantom Brave box. Yes, that's what we're unboxing today. The focus will be on the new game, and it is a completely new game, a real sequel to the now 20 years old original Phantom Brave game. What made them think about, after all this time, making a sequel? Now that's an interesting story. I've got an interesting interview. In fact, I've got several, and I will be quoting from them today. As usual, all the information and links are in the video description below. First up, I found an interesting piece of information in an interview with Yuya Hosono, one of the staff at NIS, who talked to the magazine Dengeki, and he disclosed something really fascinating. First, a poll held in America of the most popular Nippon Ichi software characters was a trigger for making this sequel. At the time, our company had released several of our games in America, but we thought the top spots would probably be held by characters from the Disgaea series. A reasonable assumption because Disgaea has always been the big NIS game, hasn't it, in the West? However, when we looked at the results, Phantom Brave characters ranked higher than the Disgaea characters. It was honestly unexpected to see these results, but it made us realise, even after 20 years, there's still a desire for Marona and her team. Our American subsidiary NIS America also asked, why don't we somehow try to make a move? And we understood there's a strong fan base in Japan too. So we started development with the feeling of, well, why don't we try it? Why not indeed? Obviously, I won't have time today for an in-depth view at all the gameplay, but I will just show you little clips in between, as I usually do, to demonstrate certain features. So the good news is that there is now a demo available for Phantom Brave, and obviously if you're interested you will want to try before you buy. And the game itself launches quite soon, actually, in just a few days really, January the 30th in North America. Just mentioning it for my viewers here in Oceania, as usual we have a week's delay, so the game won't be available until the 7th of February. But of course, if you have the American edition, then you're in luck and you can start on the 30th of January. Now, I was very lucky in that I was also provided by NIS with a code for the game, so I could start early and really, get stuck into it and get a good impression of the game. And I have taken advantage of that, and I have played 25 hours so far. So I'll be talking about that more, what I found out. So, of course, there will be a significant number of players who probably have never come across the title Phantom Brave before. So the team had the difficult task of trying to provide a game that will satisfy the fans of the original while also being accessible to people playing it for the first time. Do I think they've managed to pull it off? In the 25 hours I've played so far, I have to say, yes, I think the game is very accessible for new players, while having almost all of the features of the original one, but obviously modernised, plus an addition of quite a few new features. So here is the box. The three main characters are shown on the front image. If you're already a bit familiar with Phantom Brave, you're probably going to recognise Marona, the green-haired girl. Well, she was a girl in the original game. She's now a bit of a young lady, we'd have to say. Behind her stands her faithful friend of many years, Ash, and at the front there's a new character called Apricot. And she and Marona become big friends. That is a big part of this new game and the new story. The back image shows the island because Phantom Brave games are set in a world of islands. You have to navigate across much water and find all the various islands. In the original game it was called Phantom Island, but in this game it is Skull Rock Island. And you know what I'm going to comment on next, and that is the cardboard, of course. The box, good old NIS cardboard, a slight give, but still a very sturdy box. And I really love the design. I mean, it's done beautifully. I hope you will agree with me that the character artwork in particular for the game is beautifully done. I had to open up the box from the bottom because it was so tight at the top. I was worried about causing a tear up there in the flap. As long as we can get at the contents. I have not looked at a listing of the box contents. I just haven't had time. I don't know what surprises are lurking inside. I would expect on the whole it'll be very much sticking to the fundamentals, which would be Artbook and soundtrack, plus some extra. And something slid out straight away. And I have no idea what it is. It looks kind of sparkly. It's a bit difficult to avoid the reflection because it's a glass front. It's a very cute little display, I would say, but I've just checked the NIS box contents listing online, and I think it refers to it as a coaster. So I'm not totally sure. I would need to check that. But it's really nice because it shows Skull Rock Island, and in the foreground we have the three main characters in their chibi form. And they're standing in something white and sparkly. And if you let the light sort of roam over it, it looks just like they're standing in the foam of the foreshore waters, you know, the waves coming in. That's what I think it probably is. Like the game and the character art, it's cuteness overload in a good way. I think we have another diorama set. I had one just recently with Ease, both of Falgana, if you've seen that unboxing. acrylic dioramas seem to continue to be extremely popular. It just means it's fiddly and I have to put them all together. The original soundtrack, I'll just get the cellophane off. So there you are, soundtrack front cover. And on the back, as you would expect, a track listing. 2 discs, 17 tracks on each. And you know what I do with the soundtrack. I will take some of the tracks and use them for little highlights here. Very nice presentation. Composer Tenpei Sato, of course. Captain's Log Artbook. Well, we will be having a look at that. But before we dive into all these goodies, I promised you history time, so let's have a bit of back history. I have already mentioned Disgaea when we talked about the popularity rankings of the characters and how Disgaea is really the flagship series for NIS, especially in the West. Well, Phantom Brave has always been what I would call a close cousin. It shares many of the tactical gameplay features of Disgaea, but it isn't just a copy or a clone. There are some significant differences that make the playing experience, I would say, quite different. I've always thought of Phantom Brave a bit as the oddball game, if you see what I mean. When you first go through the tutorials or read about the game in a review, you might think, gosh, this sounds kind of odd. Does it work? And surprisingly, it does work. But I would say it takes some getting used to. So if you want to have a try either of the original game or the new one now, allow yourself a bit of time to get the feel for it. Unlike Disgaea, which is sort of more visually more organised because of the grid system, and it just sticks to that. Whatever strangeness comes in with lifting and stacking and throwing, it doesn't matter. You've always got that grid system. You don't in Phantom Brave, and that is quite a defining feature, even from the original game. The fact that you can move about quite freely within a radius, and you have to sort of line yourself up. The maps can be fully rotated in 3D, and it works really well for the most part. Inevitably, with any kind of 3D setup, there will always be a few blind spots, and if there is an obstruction somewhere, you may not see a character behind that only as a grey outline. But those are, I suppose, minor issues, unless, of course, you've got a huge number of characters on the map and it's just mayhem. Those situations do sometimes occur. And your actions have to be lined up as well. It introduces a totally different perspective, really. So Phantom Brave was originally a tactical role-playing game for the PlayStation 2. It's both developed and published by Nipponichi Software and was first released in Japan in January 2004. So technically 21 years ago. The same year it was also released in North America and for Europe the year after. The game then saw a new release in a slightly updated version for the popular PlayStation Portable, the PSP, in the West in 2011. They gave it the subtitle The Bermuda Triangle to distinguish that release. And that is the game that I first encountered. I've got it on my Vita, it being a PSP game, and that's where I first played it. And subsequently, in 2016, the game was also ported to PC on Steam. And 3.5 years ago, in 2021, it was reissued, I think in a somewhat remastered version for the Switch. And for the Switch, it came out in a package called Prinny Presents NIS Classics Volume 1. And fabulously, it's a double-decker. They combined 2 games into this one box. Phantom Brave, the Bermuda Triangle Remastered, and there's also another NIS game in the box, Soul Nomad. But that's how I reaffirmed my love for Phantom Brave by being able to play it on the Switch and refamiliarising myself with how the game works, which was just as well because it made it easier for me to jump into the new game, the sequel, and get into the gameplay quickly while being able to check out what new features are in the game. So to distinguish the sequel from the original and the Bermuda Triangle, they call this new game The Lost Hero. So now I'd like to introduce you to the basic setup of the Phantom Brave universe. I think it's really helpful if you understand how this world works. No, I don't consider there to be any spoilers in what I show you. It's the very beginning, the introduction of the Lost Hero, and they're trying to introduce those who haven't played Phantom Brave before to what happens in the original game, not in terms of plot, but the basics, the background to understanding how does this world work and therefore how does the game work. It is really, really essential and also very helpful. So we're just going to have I think it's just 2 or 3 minutes, just a clip to show you that. And then I want to talk about phantoms. Yes, it's called Phantom Brave for a reason. Okay, here we go.
ここはイボワール。たくさんの個性豊かな島々が浮かぶ世界。この世界には人間や動物、人間と動物のハーフ、獣人まで。
But the strangest of all are phantoms, souls of the dead, whom the living cannot interact with. However, one girl cannot only speak with phantoms, she lives with one. This is Morona, a kind-hearted orphan who lost her parents at an early age. Due to her ability to interact with phantoms, she was despised and called the possessed one. But with her phantom guardian Ash ever at her side, she was always happy. Ash lost his life along with Morona's parents, but he remained in the world as a phantom. He feels it's his duty to protect Morona and as her close friend always supports her. In fact, having Ash around is why Morona was able to grow up happy and healthy. She now works as a chroma, accepting jobs from people to solve their problems. People have slowly come to accept Morona and Ash, and after a fierce battle, they achieved something truly remarkable. They banished Sulphur, Lord of Terror and mythical Herald of Destruction, to another world. Instead of possessed, people have started calling Morona a hero. It is now 6 months later, and this is where our story begins.
あっしゅ、私のせいでごめんね。
And so Marona fell into the sea and was separated from Ash. Will they ever see each other again? Will they? And here starts chapter 1, The Possessed and the Pirate. And off we go. Let's start the adventure. I hope this has now given you a really good idea what this whole phantom thing is and what the game is about. Because you might be thinking, phantoms, sort of like ghosts? Is it a spooky story? And the original game certainly had a darker tone than this new game, which is honestly incredibly bright and cheerful. But I just wanted to tell you about how they approached phantoms here in the new game. There were several excellent interviews that Mr. Kento Jobana, the scenario writer, gave to several publications. And I'm going to quote here from one interview published by Hardcore Gamer, if you want to read it for yourself. Link in the description below. So the whole idea of phantoms, the spirits of the dead, obviously they played a role in the original story, but the depiction of them and the exploration of them in the original was never really delved into deeply. In this game, I really took a lot of time and effort showing the phantom's point of view. Just what are these phantoms? How do they feel? How do they exist? What are all their issues? Yes, a phantom has issues too. Being able to depict this is something that I'm very proud of too, since it offers a completely new view of this world of Phantom Brave. And he also mentions that he is a big fan of the Tim Burton movies and that they have given him a lot of inspiration. And that makes complete sense. It's like a bridge, you know. We can all meet up there, I think. Yeah, it's really nice to hear that. So, the phantoms are not something to get worried about or freaked out by or anything like that. There's a lot of humour in the game.
おとなしく従っていたのがバカみたいじゃん。
筋肉チャンス。他の連中に先を越される前に俺の
So that also eases things. However, just to come back to the aspect of darkness, I personally, as you probably know by now, don't have a problem. I do like dark themes. But not everybody does, and sometimes we don't really feel like approaching something like that. And I think they took that into account because I think the original game took a lot of people by surprise. You know what it's like with Japanese games? There's often these really cute chibi characters and you think, oh yes, cute, it's gonna be fun and sweet and all that, and there's a load of stuff coming at you, you know. There's a bit of a threshold. And I think they really wanted to step over that threshold with this new game. So I quote again from the interview. One thing we noticed from the first game's reception was that at the beginning of the first game it was pretty dark for quite a while. The reception Marona sees from people in various villages and things like that is really sad. So it takes a while for the story to move into more positive, bright directions. A lot of players, it turns out, were turned off by that continuing darkness and this poor little girl. So we moved away from that. Marona is able to be there as a propelling force, and her positivity and her attitude and her growth in the first game allows the story to stay in a brighter area, so that it should be more appealing to people who maybe don't really deal as well with the super dark stuff. So I think that gives you a very good idea where the game and the story is coming from and how it's presented. And honestly, if you want to have a good time with fun and cheerful characters. This might well be the game. My healer is enjoying some super bounce here. It looks fun, but I have no idea what it's good for. It seems to be that particular bush that acts like a trampoline. I thought I might be able to jump over onto some higher objects, but I couldn't, so not sure whether it's very useful. But as I said, there's all sorts of weird and oddball stuff going on in this game. So here we have a few art cards. This is one of the main or profile pictures you see in many promotional materials. Here's another one featuring the three main characters. And if you look very closely, you can see at the bottom they're sitting there on a mound with a defeated enemy. But there are some items at the bottom, and items are very important in Phantom Brave, just like in Disgaea. But in Disgaea we have the item world, and here items are different. I'll be showing you that in another video clip or two. Some of the items that feature are, for instance, an anchor or a fish. A lot of things you might find on a beach, like shells and starfish, but also plants and rocks and all sorts of stuff, and they're all important for how you play the game. And there's also a bottle, and bottles are or can be really important too. You can even recruit a bottle. Oh yes, and that's very cool. Here's a very sweet picture in a slightly different style of Marona and Apricot. Here they are again with a bottle, and a third one for good measure with what I think is a defeated enemy. I think I've seen those ferocious dogs. Here are Ash and Marona, and once you understand their relationship and their background, this just makes complete sense. Yeah, a very close and loving relationship. He really is like a big brother. And finally, a fun illustration showing Marona picking up Ash. Quite a surprising number of cards. 2, 3... I count 7 cards. I have got to tackle the diorama now, so you have time to put on the kettle if you like, or get yourself some other beverage. And I got it! Skull Rock Island diorama. Do read assembly instructions very carefully. Once I realised how it all fitted together, it was a cinch, and they all fit beautifully. So here it is. And there you can admire it up here. It's actually a nice idea doing it like that. Usually you just have sort of layers where you stack the characters in the front and then a background. But this actually makes a lot of sense. I think it actually looks really nice. And having all 3 characters together in one piece made it a lot easier. It's not just a standee, it's a proper display item, I would say. Here's the game. When you buy just the game, you get the Deluxe Edition. With a mini art book and a digital soundtrack. This one has 8 tracks. And that's what the mini art book looks like. Covers the 3 main characters, plus in smaller print some other ones, and a couple of pages of background illustrations. So that's what you get when you buy the Deluxe Edition. Join Marona and her phantom friends on a mission to defeat the sinister shipwreck fleet. age rating T for teens. So before we launch into having a look at the art book, which is always the really big ticket item for me, let's just have a look at another few clips I prepared from the gameplay to show you a bit more, ranging from the graphics and character art to camera work and positioning, basic gameplay mechanics, etc. Here on the title screen for a map in Chapter 1, you can already see all the archers crisscrossing, indicating lots of protection or buffing status going on. At this stage, it's not too confusing as yet. If there is a treasure chest, we go for it, of course. You can also see on the map a little hefty gun for dispatching bombs, so that's one of the gadgets you can occasionally use. Sometimes the enemies look like exact replicas of my own crew members, so it's important to watch out for the little red bar to make sure you distinguish enemy from friend. And also watch out for friendly fire. It is very easy, especially with more complex attack skills, to get your allies caught in the fray as well. Here is another example with my archer Missy fiddling around trying to line up a shot just so. I guess that's the other side of the coin with this type of open, free plan attack type, that it's not as straightforward to line up a shot and execute it as it would be with other systems. But I have to say, once you've got it down pat, it can be very satisfying to deliver that one perfect shot. And we happily return to Skull Rock Island. Another important aspect for understanding the basic gameplay is the protection status that certain items can offer. You see these funny arched lines that look sort of a little bit like McDonald's arches, sprouting from some items and going to other items. They can also go to characters, both your own and to enemies, of course. Therefore, destroying items that offer protection to an enemy is the first thing you should be doing. But if it's an item that you think you might want to use yourself for confining, then you obviously want to retain its properties. A quick word about the radius you see around Morona. This is the area in which she can find confining items, so you are restricted, and depending on where you move Morona to, you can extend that. But going towards enemy territory, well, there is risk and reward. You see here Apricot. She doesn't have a lot of SP left, not enough for a big attack on that wolf, but she's got enough for a little healing prayer spell, which would come in handy for one of her fighters. But I'm trying to demonstrate here how crucial it is to be in exactly the right spot for whichever attack you want to execute, and healing, like anything else, comes under the attack category. A look at Apricot's very early stats and skills. I gave her my best sword, and under abilities you see her passives. Here is one of Morona's fighters eyeing up a naughty fish, which has an amazing buffing effect of plus 50% attack. Equipment levels up very fast while you use it in battle, but he's not tempted because I've given him a very good sword. And here is the chef, whom I equipped with a palm tree. Yes, that's right. He's wielding a coconut palm tree, and it's perfectly useful. In the early stages, it's difficult finding a good weaponry for all of your crew members. So having a look at some of the beach items is not a bad idea. So Captain's Log Artbook, smallish size, 74 pages, thick hardback with a sort of leather feel, soft cover. And NIS really have experience with producing this type of art book. I mean, how many have I shown you over the years? I haven't counted them, but quite a few, I would say. Yes, it says there will be spoilers. I'll be careful, but there aren't a lot of spoilers. So we have illustrations, magic illustrations, characters, ships, weapons, and backgrounds. And yes, you can develop different types and styles of ships with different attributes over the course of the game. I haven't been very successful with that yet, I'm afraid. But all the other extra features and gameplay mechanics, I think I've been able to try so far. So here we have the package illustration. That's my right side, so probably your left. And on the other side, a summer greetings card. And we've seen those illustrations on the art cards. The paper is thick and good quality, and the print work, as I would have expected, is high quality and comes through really nicely. Even when they go into quite tiny illustrations, you can still see the detail. You may remember I've complained in the past that occasionally that wasn't the case anymore with some of the art books I've shown you, that detail gets lost at small sizes, but they have managed to retain it here, so hats off for that. So this is the page for Marona, and I won't show it right close up. There is some text there, but it would be a spoiler if you knew absolutely nothing about the original game and about Marona as a character in this game. Since you've probably seen the introductory video clip I showed you right at the beginning, which explains the background of the world and what the phantoms are all about, then there will be nothing new for you here in the description either. The same applies to the page for Ash. Ash always looks to me the closest really to a typical Disgaea character, I'd have to say. And here's the new character, Apricot. And she is incredibly cute, there's no other word. If you watch in the video clips when the characters are walking, Apricot wears the sort of dark blue navy coat, and you see the back of her coat is probably quite a sort of thick, stiff coat. It keeps sort of bobbing up and down. It looks really charming. So Apricot really learns quite a lot, I think, from Marona, and how Marona has faced adversity in the past and had the bravery to confront difficult situations. There's a lot of synergy between those two female characters, and I think you might enjoy that. I certainly do. Here's a character called Ruin. He's a beast man. And he is a new character, and there's a little bit of background about him on the page. The same applies to Henna. She appears, she's an important character in chapter 3, then joins the crew at the end. So I'm giving away something here. Oh goodness me, there's a character who joins the crew. You will have a huge cast of characters. The game is very good at pacing how much it introduces, so you're not overwhelmed with stuff straight away. In fact, you might be wondering, well, what's all the fuss about? And, just keep going through the chapters, and I think you'll find things will develop in due course. So there are several stages, for example, once you reach them, where you can create your own characters, your own phantoms, who can then join as party members, and each time you get a new bunch, and I've got a little clip about that. I'll try and just pop that in here. So very early on we get access to a good basic set of team members with a variety of skills. Not just your typical fighter and striker, who are also absolutely essential for learning skills, so do not neglect putting them in your team. The witch is exactly as you would expect in an RPG, same with the wizard. They tend to be quite squishy. The healer, she can be very versatile. A thief and the merchant. The merchant is really good. She can pick up special items during battle and put them in stock so that later you can buy them from her. Stuff that you would not find otherwise. We've reached chapter 3. You see how even the title pages for the chapters are beautifully done. The first time we had phantoms join Marona's crew, they were the basic character classes like fighter, thief, wizard, witch, but now we're getting more specialized classes. The engineer, for example, will be very important for creating and maintaining gadgets to aid you in battle. And there are also monster phantoms who will join you. The saber kitty is actually not bad at all. And here we have all the different classes, the characters for the classes that you can create and use in the game. Fighter, vanguard, witch, striker, healer, engineer, explorer, angler. Interesting and fun to experiment with. Sailor, sniper, merchant, musician, chef, old man, granny, owl mage, goat fighter, and a merguard. Yeah, and each of them has beautiful character illustration. The one important thing about the phantoms in the game is that they come with a recommended type of a weapon to equip with, but you don't have to use that. There is so much stuff in the game. It can be a bit overwhelming, so just literally pick anything you fancy. It's easy to go through and look how equipping each weapon or item. I mentioned all those items before, from anchors to bits of grass, coconut, palm tree, rocks, anything. You can literally equip anything to a character, and it's astonishing how the stats for the characters change. Let's take a look at the equipment menu. And while my top characters tend to get the choicest equipment, depending on circumstance, I switch it around with any kind of item. Marona used to have a fancy sword, but I found this amazing bone that gives her incredible stats. Here you can see the stat changes instantly as I go through all the types of equipment, how it affects her various attributes. And it's a really easy and quick way of picking something, whether you want high HP or high intelligence, whatever. It's a very neatly organised system. I do love a good menu, but for the moment she's keeping that bone. Marona doesn't have a preferred specialty equipment. She can use anything. And unlike in the original Phantom Brave game, in this one, you can make her into quite a good fighter. Now, Apricot has had a bog-standard normal sword right from the start, but it's leveled up beautifully as she progressed, and I haven't found anything else that quite does the same job. You can see at the top under specialty I have highlighted the weapons classes that are preferred for her and makes it easy to go through them quickly. And even there I've got a heap of equipment just through, clearing maps really. You can also quickly and easily check the skills that are attached to the equipment and the character's passive skills. And while the game may look a bit difficult, possibly in the beginning, not too much I think, but there's a few tricky situations. It's amazing how you can beef up your characters in no time by equipping something maybe a bit unusual on them that gives them a huge advantage, like a huge amount of HP or a great deal of defense. This game I think it's heaven for people who love fiddling around with their characters, with their equipment and items. But you don't have to just pick what they recommend and pick a sword or a wand or whatever, staff, and you're good to go, and you'll still be fine. The fun is in the detail, I think. Here are the different types of ships you can develop. The one great feature of Phantom Brave is, of course, the confining. What's confining? It means the basic gameplay mechanic to get your characters placed on the field map is something that Morona controls, and only she can do, because she's got the ability to place a phantom inside an item. Any kind of thing you will find on the map. It could be a rock or an old rusty sword or an old coconut lying around. And each of these things has special attributes that can buff your character further. For the very first tutorial, it gets explained to you, and I hope I can find that clip as well. So here's our first real fight against some wannabe pirates.
Please trust me. Now fight by my side! Okay, I'll fight. I'll help you stop Rico. Thank you, Apricot. I knew I could trust you. Now, take my hand. Valiant phantoms, aid me in battle! Chartreuse, yeah!
Here comes the meat and potatoes of the game. Phantoms have no physical form, so you need to confine them into some item. That way they can join you in battle, but only for a certain number of turns. That is why you need a high number of crew members, so you can swap in new ones. You see, the tutorial is very clear and helpful, and once you've got the basics down, well, this world opens up like an oyster. Just move your analog stick over until it responds by showing you can confine. And you pop in your character, your phantom.
Confine! It's my turn?
Beginner's tip: don't confine all your phantoms at once. Leave yourself some room so you can move them in strategically. Here is Apricot using her active skill against an enemy. Your active skills are tied to your equipment. Change the equipment, you change your skills. It is such a fun system. You're never stuck in a rut, really. Also remember, if you use the throw command, you will throw your equipment. It's something I don't tend to do as a rule. Weapons. More weapons. And I assure you this is only a small selection. Now, backgrounds often don't come across very well in smaller art books, and especially at smaller sizes for the pictures. But in this case, it actually works quite well, I think because of the particular art style they've used for the backgrounds. It's sort of bright colours, bold shapes. It works well even at smaller size. And the end piece shows the stylized chibi figures of some of the characters. Now I'm showing you all the various clips are all taken basically from the first 3 chapters, so not very far in. I'm only in chapter 4. How did you manage to spend 25 hours on that, Britta? Well, the answer is simple. I like testing things, and I feel I need to do that. So I often replay maps to try and figure out how certain things work or how to do them better. And if you have watched, for example, my video about Fire Emblem games on the 3DS, you'll probably remember my story about how I obsessively replay certain maps and how I enjoy doing that. The same thing happened in this game, and that's always a sign that I'm getting involved with the game, really involved, if I start doing the replaying the maps thing. Plus, I felt it was important I tried out all the various new features, like there's a one where you can create your own dungeons. Well, you don't really create them, they're sort of, the type is preset, but then they're randomized, I think. Anyway, that's a whole really topic for another video, I would say. The dungeons are a completely separate feature, and my first exploration of one was an absolute shocker because I hadn't read the help file information, which is copious and helpful, although it doesn't tell you quite everything. I did manage to beat the dungeon boss in the end, but I came to the conclusion that dungeons are probably something better left for the later stages of the game. From my one-time exposure to a dungeon, I have some fleeting concerns over how they are programmed. I encountered numerous technical issues, such as not having any items for confining available when starting a floor, items not displaying their attributes properly, downed allies not being able to be revived. The maps just felt completely different from the regular game maps, in that the whole experience felt less polished, as if a different team had been programming the dungeons. I'm hoping I just had some weird experience due to trying a dungeon so early on, but if not, then this needs to be cleaned up, I think, in the form of a patch, I suppose. Despite all that, I still managed to finish the dungeon, so I wouldn't classify this as a serious technical issue. But it's a shame because the rest of the game does feel extremely well realised and well polished and finished. In the interview, the new features that were specifically pointed out are the gadgets, and that's a new thing that you can develop gadgets. That's why you need an engineer, you see. There's a whole variety of them. The first one you get is a Peashooter. Here's the rather cute Peashooter, but beware what kind of terrain you take it onto. I got myself truly stuck there in the scenery. One of the very, very few technical problems I had on any of the maps. Do you love blowing up stuff? Poor Ernest. they have occasionally got me out of a tight situation, I have to say. One in particular where I was stuck in a dungeon with 9 levels and I was perspiring trying to get out of there. And Apricot's HP was only a sliver left, and I thought, how do I keep her going? You can actually put a character into the Peashooter. They can go on board, and I did that, and she was able to safely get on to the new round that way. I chucked her away in there. I had no idea whether that would work, but it did. So there's all sorts of stuff you can find out, lots of little surprises. So that's the gadgets. And there are various ones you encounter in different maps, which are sort of on the map already, and you can then use. So this is another gadget that appears on some maps. I've got Confine in there because he is super powerful, as you can see from his attack. So the blowback skill is actually fairly short range, and obviously there's nobody there, so I switched to pull, and that gives me access. I have to fiddle around a bit. There we are. I can access an enemy and try out pulling them in, which would be convenient because trekking over to an enemy can consume time and turns. The other one is what's called Confriend. So we've come across Confine, which is what Morona does, placing phantoms into or onto items. But Confriend is something completely different. So Morona joins up with a given character from her crew, and she takes on a lot of their abilities and skills, and she gets stronger too. And the interesting thing about that is that the higher the bond you have with that character, when you defeat an enemy, you get an extra turn, an extra round, and it says, again, and you can go and wallop them again. Once again, this is sometimes really, really helpful in a tight spot or when you have a particularly powerful enemy. I think the last time I played, I was able to have at least 3 turns, so that was quite good. Here is Morona confriending with Apricot for a boosted attack. And each time you confriend, you get a little cutscene specific to that character. By the way, my witch, equipped with that wide doodah, a change book, is being boosted, as far as I can tell, by that mushroom over there. I'm going for the bunny, because they actually can be really bothersome. Please note that technically, once an enemy is knocked out, they are not gone completely. They can be resuscitated. So if in doubt, give them the final knockout. And we get another turn. Great. Basically, if you knock out one enemy, you then get another turn. But 2 for the price of 1 is good too, and 1 went OB, so I'm happy with that. End turn, and that's it. We had 2 turns. It's still fairly early in the game, so later on you'll get a lot more. Here is quite a good example showing how in a slightly more complex enemy environment, rotating the map, being 3D, you can't always see everything in detail. It's inevitable, but it means you sometimes fiddle about quite a bit with the camera to get the right angle you need. This map was a bit more advanced, and this owl mage in particular proved a nuisance. you can probably see he's getting boosted by several of his crew members as well as some items. It can be quite tricky figuring it all out. It takes a bit of time. So instead of getting rid of all of those items and other enemies first, while he was fluttering about causing mayhem, I thought, why not just Confriend and go straight for that owl mage? And that's what I did. So this is now my second turn confriended with Apricot, and I'm going for the Blazing Cut. Whoa, and he's OB. And I get a third turn. Nice. Now I can clean up the rest of the map. So with all this detail, and I haven't even gone into that much detail yet, what kind of game is this? Is this one of these JRPGs that just will consume your life and 100 hours? Well, the thing is, you see, if you want to, you can play it for 100 hours. But you don't have to, and they've done that quite cleverly. I noticed it is very easy if you stick to the essentials to just breeze through the main story and hop from one chapter to the next. Each chapter so far what I've played had about 5 or 6 maps max, so that's not too much. I just tell you what it says in the interview. If you just want to beat the main story, you're looking at 20 to 30 hours. Now, that's what I would call a shorter JRPG. That's around half the size of a regular 60-hour one. However, once you complete the main story, there's a lot of post-game stuff that you can do, quests and things like that. If you're looking to clear all of that content, then that's probably 80 hours worth of content. Beyond that, you can do the random dungeons. Hello, I've tried the dungeons and they are mind-blowing. Oh my god. You can have different titles that you can put on people, and you need to work towards those titles. You can do the salvage missions. Yes, I'm doing those all the time. So if someone gets really involved in all of that, they can easily put in over 100 hours. I would say easily is not an exaggeration at all. Let's have a look at the facilities. I've unlocked all of them bar one. So let's start with create character. That's obvious. Then there's the shop. The rare goods are interesting because those are the things the merchant sometimes picks up in the dungeons. Look at that naughty slasher. How expensive is that? I'm not spending 15,000 Bordeaux on that. I'm saving up for some other bits and pieces. Fusion is interesting. It's run by the granny. I wonder who that is. Never seen that character before. Anyway, it's something that's a bit of an extra, I would say, and will probably come into its own at higher levels. I've played around a bit with it, and it's fun, but at lower levels you're not gaining an awful lot, really. You really want to aim for a compatibility of an S rank that will give you the best. And that's what we've got here. Not that we need it, it's just a demonstration. So that was Granny's fusion. Next we'll go to healing, and that's straightforward because you only need it for fallen units. Side quests. Now, those are fun, and there's a good number of them. I do love my side quests. They are useful to do. Once again, it's not something you absolutely need to do, but you might want to fit in the odd one. You see, I've completed quite a few already. Gadgets. Well, here we have the Peashooter. That's my only one so far. And you can add extra skills by using the Confine feature so many times. That's easy enough, but gadget research comes expensive. I'm saving up for 100,000 Bordeaux at the moment. That'll take a while, so I can upgrade it. And you need to be level 50, so I've got quite a bit to do at the juice bar. The marina I haven't been very successful with, because for each ship type you need certain types of materials, and there's always one piece I've got missing. So I'm a bit miffed about that. I'd really like to finish one of these ships. I'm working on it. So next up, skills. That's pretty straightforward. They are marked as new in the list. If you need to upgrade anything, always do it straight away. I haven't got much, only one at the moment, because I haven't equipped any new equipment, and I'm up to date on the passive abilities. And you have some scrolls which you can use. They're often quite specific. Now then, the big one, the juice bar. You may know the juice bar from Disgaea, first introduced in Disgaea 6. Well, this juice bar here is on steroids.
力が湧いてくるだろう。
For a game with a huge cast of crew members who all need to be kept up to date, this is an absolutely essential facility, and they've done it well. It is not difficult levelling up almost all your members sufficiently, even your lowest ranked or most recent ones. You can even adjust the ratio of how much XP you want to go straight to your characters in battle, and how much of the XP goes to the juice bar to be dispensed there. Titles is another cool feature. It also ties in with dungeons, but I can't really go into too much detail here. They're pretty complex, and again, it's something that comes into play much more at a later stage, I reckon. Create a dungeon. It's pretty straightforward, and you can also explore them from here. As you can see, they're available at fairly low levels, but I think I should go to Dog World. Now here you see some dungeons like enemy level 325. I don't think I'm quite ready for that yet. Salvage I've already mentioned before. Music simply provides new background tracks which you can unlock and purchase. And data gives you the usual kind of statistics and overview that you might want to check occasionally. So there you have it, all the facilities. So that should give you a very good idea whether this is a game you want to tackle, whether that appeals to you. Finally, they also had a word for new players, people who are not familiar with Phantom Brave and just looking at the footage maybe and thinking, this looks kind of weird, I'm not sure whether I can cope with this, all the strategizing. People out there who have either never heard of the game, or if they have heard about it but haven't played it, they look at the Lost Hero and they say, "Whoa, Phantom Brave came out 20 years ago. Do I need to play that?" This is something that the development team completely understood, and they kept all of this in mind when making this game, so that not only does it appeal to existing fans, but also is easily accessible to people who have never played or heard of Phantom Brave. It's not your typical dark strategy RPG. This game is very bright, it's very cheerful, it's almost got this fairy tale children's story feel to it. And yes, that is actually right. It's almost like a sort of Treasure Island atmosphere. Yeah, I love Treasure Island. With all the different islands you visit, and the pirates everywhere you have to deal with. If you love pirates, this is a wonderful game. So I haven't disguised any of the slight problems I've had with the game, but really it's not putting me off playing it. Well, there you have it. Phantom Brave, the Lost Hero. I hope you enjoyed this unboxing. Thank you very much for your time. Please keep well. I'm Food for Dogs. Bye-bye.